I want to welcome everyone to today's class. If you are new here, my name is Megan. The class is being recorded, so if you're not able to attend the live event, I encourage you to ask questions through the recording, through the YouTube comments, because I'm here to support you. But in today's class, we're going to be painting a beautiful lotus inspiration, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The supplies that I'm using for today's class are acrylic paints. So I have our primary colors for our inspiration today are blues and oranges. So having blue and orange is a good thing. If you don't have orange, we can easily make orange using red and yellow. So colors to have on hand are blue, yellow, red, orange if you have it. I'm going to be mixing a navy blue color for some contrast. So if you have a black on hand, that's helpful. And then as you can see, we have white. So joining these classes with all those basic primaries is always a really good thing to do. The other supplies that I have for today's class is I'm painting on 11 by 14 canvas paper. I have an array of brushes, small, medium, and large. I have like a large flat tip brush that we'll be using for some of the detail work, which will be really fun in large scale, but we'll also be using that brush for other areas as well. I have a cup of water to rinse our brushes. And I have a palette paper, which will act as a plate to mix colors on. This is kind of like a wax paper. It's pretty cool. You can kind of peel it up and I can throw this sheet away when I'm done, which is kind of neat. So I like to use this as my plate when I have it. And that's pretty much it. So outside of that, if you wanted to grab a pencil for some sketching, we're going to do sketching on the second layer of our inspiration today. So the first layer is going to be really fun and different. We're going to be using a blue and a navy blue to do a background design behind our lotus flowers. So this is where you're going to see something in the background behind our primary design. So it's going to look really neat. It's going to look like multi-dimensional. So what we're going to do that is I want you to grab your plate and we're going to start with our blue. So grab your blue of choice. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue on my plate. So this is, I'll call this is the base blue. Okay. I'm also going to put a little bit of black, a tiny touch of black. And I'm going to make a navy blue and I'm going to put a little bit more blue right here. I'm going to have a navy blue to touch into. And I'm going to have a base blue. So I will grab first, I'll do the base blue. And you can paint the entire canvas with this base blue color. So I'm going to just start painting the whole thing this base color. And then we're going to do navy blue detail on top of this, if that makes sense. So I'm just using one of the bigger brushes I have. You can use a little water on your brush if you want to. Or you could just use, pure paint. Sometimes I like dipping the brush in a little water. And you can totally do that. If you want to save on paint, you can dip your brush in a little bit of water and have some fun there. I'm just going to do some nice smooth brush strokes. And paint this full background. And just take your time. If you want to have some lighter blue come through along with this base blue, that's fine. You can't really mess this part up. We're just starting to fill in the entire background. You want to go all the way over to the edges. And this is where you can just settle into the process. I like doing long, smooth brush strokes. If you use a lot of paint, try to move it around a little bit so it dries more quickly. If you have a lot of paint or a lot of water, it'll just take longer to dry. So you can see I'm just going back and forth to get this to dry as soon as possible. And this is going to be such a beautiful addition to our painting today because we're going to be able to do this fun background design in addition to all the other beautiful lotus details. I'm a sucker for a lotus. Oh my goodness, they're just so beautiful. The meaning is just gorgeous. And there's so many different qualities to doing different lotus designs because there's angles and sizes and depth you can create such a beautiful flower. But with this blue, you want to get in all the nooks and crannies. And I'm painting 11 by 14, so this is going to take a minute. But everybody, you painting on different sizes. I think Jenny's painting on a square one today, maybe, which is kind of cool. A little smaller than what I've done. And I didn't have any tape. Sometimes you can put tape and block off some white frames and paint within a smaller area, even if you're painting on a canvas or painting on paper. Just move that. I'm going pretty heavy with the blue paint because I want it to be really bold. Sometimes I use water to make things look a little bit more wispy. I'm going for more of a bold look today. Heavy color. I use a little more paint, but that's okay. But this time is for you. So I encourage you to put on your favorite music. Sometimes, you know, having headphones on or having a cup of tea. It's so great to see each of you. And if you're watching the recording, a warm welcome. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, I encourage you to do that. Sometimes I post some bonus videos. I'm going to be posting some like artsy talks soon. It's always fun to get notifications through YouTube when new materials posted. So I just want to thank you all again for being here and supporting our fun together. And I want you to enjoy this time for yourself because there is a lot of benefits to painting and holding this time for yourself, whether it's creative time or time just to kind of turn off your brain. That's why we're here. We all need that outlet. And I'm just going to get a little bit more blue paint. My canvas is pretty wet, but it's drying pretty quickly, so we're all right here. But I'm just going to work my way all the way down. And I'm doing a lot of blue paint, so this is just going to take me a minute. Everybody has different size canvas, so it's going to take everybody a different amount of time to apply the color. And we want the background to be mainly dry before our next step. So with acrylic, it dries usually pretty quickly, especially if you see a wet area, moving your brush left, right over it is really helpful. I'm going pretty heavy on the paint because I just want thorough coverage. I don't want any of those white little nooks and crannies to come through. I want it to be totally covered. So we'll spend the first 5 or 10 minutes just painting this background blue. Then we're going to spend another 5 or 10 minutes doing the blue lotus background detail before we do our other primary stuff. And that's going to add shading and depth behind our primary images. It's going to be really fun. But these colors are going to be beautiful and vibrant. Absolutely beautiful and vibrant. And I have a fun technique that we're going to try for the lotus petals on the front end in the foreground. And I don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's a fun thing we can try together. And we'll do some drawing with our pencil on top of this blue layer after. So once we get some of that area in, I'm just going to cover up a little bit of the water space I have up here. And then we can move to do our navy blue. So if anybody's ready to mix your navy blue, I'm pretty close. I have a big blue canvas. And it's going to take a minute to dry, but acrylic dries fast, so that's okay. I'm going to find just like a medium brush of sorts. This is probably a number 4 or 5. I'm just going to mix a navy blue color with a little bit of black. I want this color to be darker than the background color. And there are so many options we can do for this background here. It's kind of a bluish gray, which is fine. Doesn't need to be navy. It can be a bluish gray, like dark like this. But I want it to be a contrast. And you can see by looking from one to the other that there is a contrast. And you can get as fancy or simple with this background design as you wish. So you can see my brush. I'm spinning my brush on the edge. And if your background's a little wet, it's okay. And I want you to play with lotus designs and shapes within this space. So a lotus can come down and up. Lotuses can point in different directions. So you can have a couple primaries and a couple smaller ones. And then I'm going to do that long stem, and I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to take it kind of down and off the bottom. Maybe I connect it here, and maybe there's another little petal here. This is just fun lotus shapes. And I want you to add these in all different places. So I'm going to add another one over here. Maybe this one will be turned a little bit. You can use a smaller brush than I am if you want to, but a lotus can have, you know, bigger petals and smaller petals. It can have these lower ones like the 1 and the 2. We're going to be covering up much of this, but this is just fun detail for our lotus. And the petals can come down, and maybe this one will come over. So background lotus details, and I'll go through the lotus design with you so you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to turn my canvas so you can see the lotus design. So you can start by doing one big petal like this for your lotus. And then you can do a side petal and a side petal. And then you think of all these little layered petals layered in. And then sometimes a lotus has these little ones flaring off to the left and the right down below. So that's not perfect, right? You all know me. I'm not striving for perfection, but I'm just giving you an opportunity to play with the lotus design. And maybe I'll do just like a little lotus bud here, like it hasn't quite opened yet. And you can do as many or as few, and I'm having fun here. So I encourage you to have fun with this step. We're practicing our lotus designs. And we're just doing outlines. And I want you to play with tilting the lotus flowers a little bit. See how I'm bending these stems in different directions? If this flower right here is pointing to the right, maybe I'll do another one right here pointing to the left. So you can play with adding some big ones and some little ones. Some lower petals and some upper petals. And check and see what brush you're using. Maybe you want to use a smaller brush. Maybe you're okay with the brush that you're using. I'm going to add a couple of just buds, lotus buds, just kind of coming in. Let's see, and I'll do, maybe there's a lotus up here, kind of going off the top of the page. This is all just fun background detail. Everything else we're doing is going to be going right on top of this. If you want to put some little lines on the inside of some of these lotus petals, you can grab a smaller brush even after, and you can do that. You want to do a little petal on the front, on the bottom like this. Here, you could do a little petal coming down in the front. Maybe this stem will go off to the side. But see how I have a nice balance of blue space and I have a nice balance of the flowers, the positioning of the flowers, the tilting of the flowers. So try to find a symbiotic balance of your composition. I'm going to put one more little flower up here. And maybe I'll grab my little brush and just do a little bit of line detail in some of these with the same color. So I'm just going to have fun. And I encourage you to do the same. I'll keep an eye on the clock. We'll spend at least another 5 minutes here. I need like a timer, ladies and gents. I'm going to put a little bit of fun detail in some of these. So maybe I'll do some thin lines on the inside of the lotus detail. Do as much or as little here as you wish. You could do little dots on the inside of the lotus petals. You could add other designs to this background. Like if I wanted to add in, I don't know. In the inspiration, it's all a lot of vertical lines, but if you wanted to add in additional petals or flowers, you could. I'm trying to maintain some blue space to still see through because I'm going to be putting additional, flowers in on top. So I'm just doing a little bit of design work, a little bit of extra lines, kind of like a henna tattoo. Jenny. Jenny's a henna artist. You can do as much or as little of that as you wish, okay? You could do some swirls in the background. You could keep it simple with just these lotus flowers. These are buds, so the buds may have, maybe a little bit of a point on top. I could play with the shape of these buds a little bit. But we're going to be painting a whole nother layer of flowers on top of this. This, again, is just background detail, which we don't always do this much detail in the background. But for the inspiration, I thought it was an amazing opportunity to try something new and do that together with you. It's quite pretty as it is. I don't know. I feel like I would just hang this as is. It's just quite simple and nice. So you can have nice, and when you're done, you can just stop and let this dry. We do want this to dry entirely before we do the next steps. But if you're using acrylic, it will dry quickly. So I think I have enough. I feel like I could add in like a few more stems here and there. So I might just do some long lined like stems just in some areas. Just like thin lines coming through. I'm using a really light hand just to add a little bit more texture and detail to the background. You can kind of pick and choose where you may feel you have gaps visually. All right. I'm just gonna use my eye and I'm just gonna add a couple lines here and there. And you can see how it's just gently filling it in. All right. All right. And just take your time and enjoy these steps. I'm just gonna lean back in my chair and figure out where else I may want to put in a few more lines. And I'm just doing a couple really thin lines here and there. So the reason it's okay to be this busy in the background is we're going to be adding whiter and brighter objects in the foreground. Does that make sense? So those white flowers and all those colors that we're going to be putting on top, they're orange and white and red and yellow. They're going to stand out like crazy. So I'm going to put my brush down. You keep working. I'm going to let this dry. Okay. That's my mission in life right now, is to finish the blue and let it dry. Yes. Grab whatever you need to, wave this around and let it dry for a minute. Now, if any of you are using watercolors, you take your time, let that dry before you move on to the next steps. We are going to have, this class is recorded. So if you need to come and follow and, catch up after, that's totally fine. Just go at your own speed always in these classes. These classes are for you. So no matter how fast or slow I'm going, you just do your thing, okay? I'm here for you and to have the best possible experience available here. So I'm going to, as this is drying, I'm going to prepare white on my plate. I'm not doing anything yet. I'm just getting some white on my plate. And if I wanted to mix an orange and have like a light orange ready, you could do that. I'm just getting the white ready on my end. White is going to be the base coat for all of our next areas. So there's a couple ways we could go about some of these next steps. We could do everything in white and then do the details on top of it. Or we could do each color at each given time. So there's a couple ways of going about it. I have an idea of what we could be doing here. So I have my white ready. Take your time if you're letting things dry, no big deal. I am going to mix, and this is almost dry. It's just, so sometimes with acrylic, you can see if it's shiny, that means it's wet. And if it's matted dry, it's dry, right? So I'm pretty close here. I'm going to mix an orange with you all while the things are drying. Probably shouldn't put that on top. Pretty close. All right. So I'm going to mix an orange with you. Orange is a touch of red. Pretty close. A touch of red and yellow. And I'm going to make an orange, and then I'm going to make a lighter orange too, but let's just mix an orange first. So that's quite a bit of red. You're going to want way more yellow than red. So I'm just putting yellow down first next to the red, and I'm going to bring in just a little bit of red into the yellow. And I'm going to grab a small to medium sized brush of choice. I'm going to grab, this one's probably pretty good. This is probably a 2 or a 3, but I'm going to grab a tiny scoop of the red. I'm going to mix it in with my yellow. A little red will go a long way. You can always add more red if you need to. And if you have a lot like me, this is fine. So it's kind of an orangey yellow. I need a little bit more red mixed in. All right, so I'm gonna, I love adding a little bit more as you go. It just allows you to manage the color orange. And what we're gonna do first is we're gonna get this color ready. We can do a little bit of sketching with your pencil. Pencil on top of this blue, you'll be able to see it from where you're at. I'll use a Sharpie, which I do not encourage you to do at home, just so you can see my lines. But I have a little bit of a yellowy orange ready to go. That's a beautiful color. And I'm just going to set this to the side, clean off my brush. And I'm going to grab my Sharpie. Do not do this at home. Use a pencil. And I'm going to look at the details and the composition. So I'm going to hold this here so we can look at it together. Let's admire the forms and shapes we see. What forms and shapes do we see? We see these multicolored lotus blossoms, I'll call them. There's, several of them, two or three big ones, and then there's some buds, and there's some of these that are off. And then we have these, I'm going to call these open leaves. These are kind of like long and flat leaves, aren't they? So those are the two forms that we're going to be drawing in together. Lotus flowers, this one's kind of open. This one have, mainly the petals are sticking up, some to the outside. I want you to practice as you're drawing these, tilting the heads of the flowers. So the heads aren't all straight up, tilting one to the right, tilting one to the left, just like I did here. Tilt them to make it look a little natural. So the first one that we'll do is we'll do some of these lotus flowers. I'm going to have them be a little different than the styles here. And I'm just going to I'll try to replicate, one thing or another. I'm going to do the placement of the flower in between these two. And you just want to start with a petal. So just a rounded petal. And then you want to layer. You can focus on those three primaries if that's helpful for you. So, and then again, I'm going to zoom down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And this isn't perfect by any means, but you're going to just layer. If you want to start with the three basics, you can. Totally fine. So I have the 1, 2, 3, and then I'm just going to slowly start to build in, and you're going to layer more petals from behind. See that? And maybe one. And then I'm going to come out and do a couple of the ones coming out. So there's that. And then this will come down and have its own base and have its own stem. And I'm not going to draw the stem because I'm going to paint the stem, but that's one flower. Having these offshoot flares of these side petals are really helpful. Okay. I'm going to do another one over here. So the thing with lotus is you want them to be as balanced as possible. So by doing that primary in the middle, sometimes will help you. And doing those two on the sides over here will help ground you. And then you can come in and add in additional petals. Okay. You can make some skinny, right? Then I'm going to do a little one here in the front. I'm going to have one come out, maybe one down here, and a skinny one over. So this is not like the most perfect lotus you've ever seen. I'm just having fun. But I'll put like a bud maybe right here. And we're going to do lines down for stems as we go. But see how I'm layering these on top. So I want you to kind of ignore the base layer. And I want you to kind of recreate the next tier, which is kind of tricky, but it's going to be worth it, I promise. So I have two here. I'm going to put another one up here. Maybe this one won't be as big. And it's okay to draw over something you already have. And this one doesn't need to have so many. You can have a smaller style lotus. That's okay. Okay. So there's one up there. So again, looking at just my Sharpie drawings, I have a bud. And I'm going to leave room for these big leaves in the middle, right? So I'm spacing these out so I can put a couple of those big fluffy leaves in. So I'm going to put one more lotus down here. I might put it here. And this one kind of has a center. So you could maybe draw a little center right here, down here at the bottom, and draw and build. And you have pencils, so you take your time. I have to be kind of in the moment here with this Sharpie. But you can bend your leaves a little bit, come out to the side. You can have just a couple big ones. You could have smaller sized petals, but having some come out and down is very helpful. So there's another lotus style flower down here. And I might do another bud over here. So use your eye. And if you want to do lines for where you want your buds to be, that's fine. I'll do my stems with a light orange in a minute. I'm just getting some of these base flowers in. So you can see I'm kind of putting these drawn flowers kind of in the gaps, kind of in between the others. If there's overlap, like this one has a lot of overlap, don't worry. And then I'm going to put in one of these long leaves. So this one's, it's kind of tricky, but just do your best. There's kind of like a wide opened area, and it kind of flutters down a little bit. Kind of give the top of your pencil a little bit of a wiggle, and there's a tip. So we're going to be doing lots of colors and layers, but just feel free to it's kind of an open long leaf here. And maybe I'll just do another kind of wide leaf over here. And we'll add more colors and lines to it after. And maybe I'll add just another kind of wiggly wild leaf over here in the corner. But let me ground some of this for you. And you can do this next step whenever you're ready. There's no rush, but this might help you visually connect everything. I'm going to take a little bit of white and a little bit of orange and make a light orange. So the step we're on is we're just sketching some of those lotus flowers. I'm just using a small brush of choice. It's kind of a lightish orangey yellow color. I might add a little bit more red to make it a little more orangey. And I'm just going to do the stems for these. And I could even outline these petals too with this color. It's not a bad idea. So as an example, let me just pick one of these. I can outline. And this is where it's really going to get beautiful. You can use a small brush of choice. And this is where this class, it's a little time consuming, so just take your time. Use a small brush of choice. This brush is, and I'm spinning the brush on my plate to have a nice fine point, trying to. But this is where those lighter colors are going to pop. And this lighter orangey color is covering up the black, which is terrific. And it will certainly cover your pencil too. And just take your time. I'm going to start to show you how this is going to come together. We do a little pre-sketching for placement and for you to kind of boost your confidence with the lotus shape, size, and detail. So it's a little complicated, but just follow along. You'll be just fine. Don't worry. I'm outlining my lines. That's all I'm doing. And look how beautiful this looks. Already starting to jump off the page. So cool. I love it when things start to come together. Now, if you haven't taken a class with me before, you're probably like, what are we doing? Is this actually going to look okay? Trust the process. I say that in some of our complex designs. Trust the process. It'll be okay. And then if you wanted to find that stem on the underside, you can create a stem and kind of go all the way down. I'm going to go behind this leaf that I have right here. And I'm just going to be really carefree and just find where the stem wants to go. And there's the stem for the first lotus that I've painted in the foreground. Okay. So we're going to rinse and repeat this for all of those. Now there's a ton of detail, right? So just take your time. And this is like the really therapeutic part of art. It's getting those shapes in place, but then this detail work is going to be really fun. And I love that we have that background detail. How beautiful. Even it's really simple. It's going to be one of those wow moments that we took a few extra minutes to do that together. So I'm just outlining all of these lotus flowers that I've drawn on top as my second layer in the foreground. So you can see I'm just outlining any marks that I've done. I have a couple of those, that petal in the middle, that open, it's kind of like a wide leaf. That's how I'm going to explain it. We're doing all the basic outlines, ladies and gents, so we can, one, we'll layer all the pretty fun other colors on the insides, but we can also figure out what additional lotus flowers we need to put in which places after. So like if I have gaps, I can add another lotus flower in, etc. after. So it's just a good starting point. I'm not painting in any of these lotus flowers yet because I don't want to lose sight of any of the petals I've created. I'm using the tip of my brush. I'm spinning my brush on my palette, my plate, to have a nice fine tip. If you need to be using a smaller brush, kind of check yourself right now. Say, should I be using a smaller brush? Am I good? I could be using a smaller brush, but I'm just having fun. I'll use a smaller brush for some of the other detail work that we'll be doing inside of these leaves and these petals. But for right now, this is good enough. Folks are painting your lotuses, you can use this orange or this lighter yellow to create stems coming down. You can keep those as thin as possible. But you can see the layers that are, it kind of looks like a fancy wallpaper it's coming into, doesn't it? Of these layers that are just happening. It's so beautiful. And these lotuses that we're painting in the foreground are going to stand out even more because we're going to be applying more color as we go, more lighter colors. Oranges, reds, and yellows. But for me, I'm going to need a little bit more detail. I know it because I'm working my way through here. And maybe I just start with what I have and I can always add more after because you can see the amount of detail that's going to go into what we're doing today. And we could easily turn this into a 2-hour class, but we'll do as much as we can here within the time we have. But one of the best things about these art classes is you can take more time after. I know many of you will take more time if you need it to continue the details, keep painting along. Paul, I hope you're enjoying this. This is a really fun, detailed one for you. I'm so glad that you're joining us. Right. And I'm just going nice and slow, again, finding any of the lotus flowers that I've sketched and making sure that they all have a stem. So I've added a couple buds. So there's a bud here with a stem coming down. There's a bud here with a stem coming down. I could easily add another bud over here. And I'm just going to freehand this because I just love being so courageous in these classes. And I'm going to have a stem coming off the left side of the page over here. Ooh. All right. And I'll probably I'm just to do another kind of random leaf up in this top corner that will be multicolored to have balance. So I have a leaf down here. So this is this wiggly line right here in my head is a leaf. This whole area down here is going to be a leaf. This over here will be a leaf, this little continent. This is a wide open leaf here in the middle, this long skinny one. I put one up in this corner. This little continent is a little leaf. And I'm looking around to see if I've painted in all of the leaves so far. So there's a lot of different ways. I'll talk through some of our next steps. There's a lot of different ways we can fill in color for these. One way is being very deliberate on what colors we put in where. So one really easy thing we can do to get started is we can do these big leaves first and do our fancy little lotuses after. So one thing I could do is I can, and you can also use your pencil to draw lines and segments. So let me just show you with my Sharpie what that looks like. I want you to know what your choices are here. So I'm going to use my Sharpie and draw some lines because it's very segmented from a visual perspective, and I'll show you. So see how this flower right here, this is the outer line of the leaf, just like I drew right here. If you want to come in and draw segmented lines like this to then fill in, that's a very deliberate way, see this, of placing your colors, okay? If you want to do that, you can. If you want to just use your brush and just do a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow and a little bit of orange and do it that way, that's fine too. I'm going to be deliberate because I am with a marker because I'm just going to show you how to do it. If you don't want to do it this way, you don't have to, but I'm going to use my Sharpie and I'm just going to create some lines. And I'm controlling the shape and I'm doing it down here. You can do some skinny. So look down here. If you can see this bottom corner, I did some deliberate lines. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And it kind of controls the visual. And in each of these segments, I'm going to paint appropriate colors. Now, this leaf is actually going to have an open spot. So I'm going to have an opening for my leaf here. It's going to come up. And then I'm going to have a line from the base coming up and around. I'm going to have some long, skinny lines. So this is me just being intentional of what colors I may want to put in where. So see, I'm using long horizontal lines on my leaf to create that elonged look of the leaf. I'm stretching the leaf out visually, horizontally. So I'm going to bring this a little closer so you can see it. So in between each of these black areas, I'm going to paint either the orange or the red or the white or the light yellow. Okay. And I'm just doing all these leaves first, and then I'm going to paint those in and you can see what they look like. So up top, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to kind of play with doing some horizontal wiggly lines. Kind of like if you've ever been, this is like a lily pad, right? As an example, when you've ever been in a pond or a small area of water, and these lily pads have all these veins and they have all these segmented areas. It's quite pretty. That's what I'm creating here, but I'm going to use lots of different colors. So I'm just going to pick a color and start. I'm going to use orange, yellow, red, and white to fill in each of these. So I have this kind of pretty, this stem color. I'm going to use this as one of my base colors. So I'm just going to pick an area and fill it in. Easy as that. So I'm just going to pick an area on one of these leaves, fill it in. So it's kind of adult coloring book here. And I might go 1, 2, 3, 4, counting over the sections, and then do another one. So I'm going to do red, orange, and white maybe. So I'm going to alternate my colors. This is, again, my approach on how I'm translating this inspiration. I want you to consider your own ideas. You don't have to copy what I'm doing. This is me just kind of following my ideas. So I'm going to do maybe this big one right here. I'm picking a section of the next flower and I'm going to do one color and I'm going to fill in a couple sections on each of these. I'm going to call them leaves with the same color, and then I'll switch to a new color. And this can be a little bit, you don't have to overthink this. We did this a little bit with our heart class by picking one color, putting it here, there, and here, and then moving on to our next color. Very similar practice. I'm gonna put this color here. And that's why sketching, doing a little bit of that compositional planning, especially if you're doing some of the segments, just sketching those out in advance. I did a Sharpie so you could see it, but if you're using a pencil, you can always change those areas. But this is really fun and beautiful. I did one big section there. Let me see, I'll do another one over here. And if I need to come in and do second coats, I can do that, no problem. But then I'm going to come up to the top and maybe this section here will be this color. And use a small brush. So if you want to get into any of these nooks and crannies, you can get into some of the smaller areas. And I'll come in and do a second coat if I need to. But I'm going to do orange next because orange is a true complementary color of blue. And I'm going to make my orange, just make sure it's really orange. So I'll show you my plate here. I'm just mixing a little bit more red, so it's a little more punchy of an orange, a little bit more of like a Florida orange color. See that right there? And I just pulled it aside within this space. Ooh, so pretty. And I have a small brush. This is like a #1 brush, but use a small brush. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with these leaves. I'm gonna find an area, paint it in. Now, sometimes with orange, when you paint over blue, you need a couple coats, or you just mix a little bit of white with your orange to just give it a stronger base, because the white will help cover it up. And then you can always add more on top as a second coat. So I mixed a little bit of white with my orange to help cover up that blue background. Ooh, it's so pretty. And I'm going to stay within those lines because I'm going to put another color next to it. And if I want to come in and do another coat of orange on top that's a little brighter, that's fine. But this is like kind of like choose your own destiny of paintings today. Now, I know other colors I'm gonna use red and white. So I'm gonna hold these two, 1, 2 right here for red and white. But I can do orange over here. I have one more little segment. So as you are putting colors on these leaves, and some of you may be doing something different right now. That's okay. No judgment zone. Just always go at your own pace. Do whatever step you want. I'll do more of a bright orange on top of this after, so it really stands out. And I'm just adding a little bit of that in here now to see it. Ooh, so pretty. And you could do blends of colors if you don't want to do straight colors. This is your piece of artwork. You can do anything that you wish with it, but just continue and move to the next leaf. So I'm going to do a little bit of the orange here on this segment. Keeping in mind, I'm going to do a red and I'm going to incorporate white as well. So you can figure out and plan what colors you may want to put where. But I love the complementary colors of blue and orange. They're energizing, but also calming. I'm going to incorporate this orange right in here. And I have a bud overlapping this leaf. So I'm going to keep the bud in the foreground. I'm going to paint around it. And if you want to keep a little bit of the lighter color on the edge, that's fine. I'm going to paint that bud anyways, so no big deal. And then I'll figure out where else I want to put this orange. So I could do red and white and orange here. So you can kind of pre-plan for what colors you want to use and pick where you want to put them. So I'm going to do red and white as my two other colors. Again, mixing a little bit of white with your orange will help cover up that blue background. And I'll come in and put more orange on top of these. But you can see these elements are really starting to take off and lift, which is really fun. If you need to switch brushes, feel free to switch brushes. Love this. All right, and I'm gonna keep working my way up. So I have more areas up here. Again, spin your brush on your plate to manage how much paint is on your brush. That's always helpful. And again, you can do second coats, so that's always important to keep in mind. Okay. So I'm just gonna move, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna move to my next color. I have red right here. So I'm gonna put red in on these leaves. Your red based on the thickness of your paint, you may or may not need to add like a white to kind of help cover up the blue. This red isn't a high quality, excuse me, is not a high quality red. It's kind of a little thin, but I'm just gonna use it to fill in. And then I can always do a second coat if I need to. And this is just base colors for these objects. So if you ever want to like move something or reshape it, you can always do that. Just let it dry and come back to it. We're going to be doing outlines. We're going to be reshaping these. So we're going to be using that light yellow at the very end to outline each of these areas. It's going to look really beautiful. So just fill in these base colors. Even if it looks like chunky or not, just trust the process. Fill in these base colors, and we're going to go in and outline in between after. Okay. So I'm going to do white in some of my remaining spots, but I'm going to do red here. So my red will need some second coats. Not too worried about that. I'm just kind of following through the process. So I'm going to do a little bit of red here. Anyone has questions or needs anything, please let me know. But I hope you're enjoying the process. Believe it or not, we are not here for the end product. We are here for the process of being here and the journey, the relaxation. So you can see some of the blue is coming through here. I'm not worried about it because I'm going to do another coat on top. But you can see how I'm dancing red and segmenting red into these leaves. It's quite fun. And I'm going to do white next. White's really going to make these leaves pop as another step. So filling in the base coat of these leaves is the step that I'm doing right now. We're going to be doing second coats whenever you wish, but we're also be doing outlining in between these leaves after. So I'm going to let the red dry. The red is wet and it's not finished. It looks spotchy in areas. It's okay. I'm not worried about it, but I'm going to just shift to the white just to get these colors on and keep moving. Because I know that it's kind of recognizing like you're going to let something dry and come back to it. It's okay for something to not be done and to shift. It's something you practice throughout art, especially if something needs to dry or if you need to think about it. My white is a really heavy bodied white, so it's going to stick well on top of the blue. And it's really going to jump out on top of this background and all these details. So again, the colors I used within my leaves are orange. I used the light orangey yellow color for the stem as one. I used orange as another, and then I did red and white for for colors. You don't have to do all these colors. I liked the look and the feel of having multicolors all over the place. We're going to try a really fun and different technique for the lotus petals. I haven't done it in a while, so we're just gonna, and if it doesn't work, we can just do something else, but we're gonna try something fun together for the lotus petals itself. So these are the leaves or the lily pads as an example, and then we'll do a fun different technique for the lotus petals. So I am painting in all of these petals, and the red definitely needs a second coat. You could even turn the red to a pink if you wanted to, or an orangey red, that's fine. But it's good again to let those coats dry as you paint on top of blue. but I'm painting white in some of these remaining areas, which looks really fun and vibrant, bright, light. You can switch brushes if you need to. I'm bringing all these colors and these points from this leaf kind of coming down towards the stem. That's something to consider if you need it. We'll be doing some gentle outlining on many of these leaves. So don't worry about that right now. We're doing, again, base colors for these objects. In this case, it's just a lot of base colors. We don't always do things this complicated. Just if you're new to our classes, this is something that, we don't do that often, which is kind of fun. We do more simplistic designs as well. All right. So I'm going to let those dry. I'm sure many of you are working away. I am going to look around and see if I want to add any other leaves. I think I'm good with leaves. If you want to do any quick second coats, you can. I think I'm just going to let all that dry as we approach some of our next steps. So this is something kind of fun to consider. If anyone has one of these palette knives, you can try to do, I'm going to try some different ways of applying colors for these lotus leaves. Now I'm going to talk through this idea I have, and if you think this is crazy, you don't have to do it. But these lotus leaves have like a brighter base white. So if I painted these lotus leaves white, great. That would be totally fine. But the lotus leaves have colors bled into them. So there's two ways we can paint these lotus leaves together, these pretty flowers, right? We can do tiny little brush strokes with a tiny brush and do lots of long skinny lines. Probably the easier option. Or you can be crazy and creative and consider the second idea that I have, which I will be the guinea pig and I'll try it first. Okay. This crazy idea I have is putting together colors on your plate. And I'm going to move this out of the way. And I'm going to be playful to talk through an idea. So using a small brush, I'm going to set up, you can either use a palette knife or you can use a flat brush tip. So let me grab a flat brush so we can show you exactly what I'm talking about. So if I have a flat tip brush like this, I can use this, put this to the side. I'm going to create a lineup of colors. Okay, bear with me here. I have a little bit of white and I'll zoom down. And I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm just going to be a little crazy here for a minute, be a little creative. I'm going to do a little bit of white and I'm going to do maybe do little dots, a little dot of white and a little dot of white here. I'm going to create a little lineup of little colors. So there's a little bit of white there. Maybe I do a white dot and then I grab a little bit of this orange and I put a little bit of the orange next to the white here. And I'll grab a little bit of red and put a little bit of red here. And I'm kind of creating a lineup of colors. You might know where I'm going with this. So I have a dot of white, red, orange, white, orange. Maybe a little bit of this. And I'm going to see if this works. So this is having fun with creativity. So I have this whole little lineup of colors. I'm going to take my brush, and I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm just going to have fun with it. I have a semi-wet brush, and I'm going to dip this. And look at, I have a blend of colors on the tip of my brush. I have white, orange, yellow, and I could even dip the corner in red. And then I could take my brush, and I'm just going to be a little wild here, and I'm going to paint the leaf with a smudge. So it's kind of dipping one corner of the brush in one color and seeing what happens. And I'm applying color to this leaf like that. So if you want to play with a detail like that, you can. I'm going to do a couple petals to see how it goes. If it's not what I want, I can do a different design. But let's just see how it goes here for a minute. And I'll be the guinea pig. And they might get mucky, right? The colors might get a little mucky. They might start blending. So that's where you have to be careful. Do you have the right brush? Do you have the patience? That kind of thing, right? I'm going to show you another way of painting these flowers. See how it's getting? I'm going to do another technique to show you for consideration. It's the use lots of tiny brush strokes technique, which is more specific if you ask me. So I'm going to take a small brush and over here on this lotus, I'll do a different technique for you. And I want you to pick and choose. So I'm going to do lots of white lines. And this is a little more deliberate. White lines coming down the petals. And if I do white lines, leaving gaps for other colors. This is a little bit more deliberate. So it's kind of a more deliberate lined look, or you can have a blended look like over here. So you can be playful on how you want to fill in your lotus flowers. It can be more abstract like this, and I'll do both. I'll show you what both look like. Maybe I take a little orange and I do some lines. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. The reason I'm showing you a couple different ways is because I want you to choose what you like better, which is kind of fun. So see, this is more lined and deliberate, and this is more abstract. So more abstract versus lined and deliberate. I kind of like the abstract look. I kind of like a little bit of orange, and I'm kind of blending it into the wet paint, which is kind of fun. But I want these these petals to be more light. So it's kind of fun to use white as a base and then blend in some additional colors along the way. So I'm giving you different ways of painting in these lotus flowers. So I'm using the tip of a brush and some white paint. I'm staying within the lines that I painted. That's helpful. And you could start with just white and then bring in a little orange or bring in a little bit of red. I kind of like this abstract better, but you can choose, right? Let it dry. If you don't let it dry, those colors are going to get all mucky. So do a little bit of white, let it dry. Because I just put a little bit of red in and it got a little pink, which is okay. But I'm going to put just a little bit of yellow or orange on like the left side of this lotus or on the right side. So I can just see a little bit of that extra color come in. But the overall base color of the lotus is white. See how it stands out? It's standing out quite a bit right there. And you can do a little bit of work and let it dry and come back to it. So for me, I want to cover up all the blue. That's important to me. You can always go back in and re-outline where those petals are. You can always do that after. But try filling in the lotus petals. I'm going to try to cover up all that blue. I'm going to do one flower at a time. And this is where it can get a little time consuming, but you see where we're going with this. Okay. It's a little different than this lined approach, right? In the inspiration. So again, it's your choice. I'll do the lined approach on this one just so you can see. And I'm not using like a very fine brush. I'm using kind of a moderately fine brush because not everybody has access to super fine brushes. If you have very fine brush, oh my gosh, it'd be so much fun to come in here with a really tiny fine brush and do that intricate detail. I encourage you to do that. It'll be really fun. But most folks who join these painting classes don't have very, very fine brushes. You may, and I encourage you to do that, but I want to make this class as approachable as possible. But I want you as the artist to pick and choose which style you like the best. So I'm approaching it two ways. I want you to look at the difference. You can make those choices. You can come in with a little bit of orange. I'm just doing my second style so you can pick and choose. And then in about 5 minutes, we'll check in with one another and see how it's going for everyone. Tell me what's working well for you, what choices you made and why. Maybe you changed your mind. It's okay to change your mind too. Always okay to change your mind. It's actually liberating to know you can change your mind in these classes. All right. And again, white is my base. So I could do a couple layers and just go back in and add white after. That's okay. So I want these flowers to be bright. And they're both very different, but they're both very pretty, aren't they? In my opinion, I think they're both very different, but um, equally cool. But for me, I want to just play with which works best for me, and I want you to do the same of which is working best for you. And if you happen to have any like wet, goopy paint, just like wipe it off with your brush and start over. That's always fine too. So I'm just gonna make sure all of my lotus flowers are nice and bright and white. I think it's the easiest way to go about this. I have these buds. I'm gonna zoom up. I have all my flowers painted except this top one as like a white starter. I'll need some more base colors added in, but this is our second layers anyways, but that's fine. With art, sometimes when you do detailed things like this, it just takes a little longer, and that's okay, as always. I am going to continue to paint in these lotus petals white. I'm maintaining that exterior outline so my petals don't get lost. That's important. And then making sure all your flowers have a stem. This lonely little flower up here, I never gave it a stem. It's floating in the middle of nowhere. I need to ground it. So I'll do that in a minute. And then you can look around to say, do I want to add do I have any open space where I need to add any more objects? Like that's another really important thing before you keep diving into more and more detail. It's like, do I need to add any more buds anywhere else? Do I want to add any more flowers anywhere else? I noticed something that I need to add is I want to add another kind of long and skinny line coming down in this area here on the left, kind of like another stem to kind of fill in some of the blue space. So I'm just going to add in another meandering stem coming in and down. It's a little like Japanese-esque. It's so cool. I love this inspiration. I hope you all love it. It's a little complicated, but I think you're all doing really great. Just gonna go nice and slow. So when we paint, I love to talk about the overall composition, what you see. I love to feel balance, or I love for the composition to feel right for me. Most of the time, it's balance of some regard. Art is not about balance, though. Let's just be clear. That's just me. So, and most of the things I paint, I want color to be balanced, or I want it to feel right visually from a color perspective. But for me, in this case, I wanted another stem or tentacle of my lotuses here to come down. That was important. So I added another one in. I noticed this poor little one here doesn't have one. and this flower is floating, and I can think about, well, where do I want this to come in? Do I want it to come in and sweep go to the left, or I want it to go to the right? Now there's a lot coming over here to the right, so I actually might bring this stem and go over towards the left. Maybe I'll go to the right first and then whip it and go over to the left. So you can kind of pick and choose what this might look like for you. It's gonna follow your gut. You have to have a little bit of confidence when you're painting your stems of just going for it. Finding a brush that works for you, having enough paint on your brush. But the more you do this, the more confidence you develop. But I want to thank you all again for being here. I hope you're having fun. I love this. It's complicated, but simple. Come in and do any second coats. I can tell you that it's going to take me probably an hour to do some second coats here, but I'm going to personally invest that time, whether it's today or another day, to keep working on this. My 5-year-old helper has just joined us if you hear any background noise. And I'm going to just look around and maybe since I have this stem color, I'm going to do any background, any secondary colors on these stems to make these stems stand out. I painted white on all my lotus flowers. I'm letting those dry intentionally right now. But there was an additional detail I did want to share with you. So as the lotus flowers are drying, I'm going to grab a small detail brush and I'm going to show you what that next step was. So remember how we were painting all of these leaves, and I should be doing second coats on those leaves, like the reds and things. But once you do all of the second coats on these leaves, I'm going to do a white outline, and I'm just doing a little bit of extra red so you can see what the red looks like. I'm going to do a white outline in between each of these sections for them to really stand out. Now I'm just going to do a quick second coat of red on some of these leaves. And then once I have that in, I will show you what this outlining looks like. But keep working on what you're doing. I'm doing a second coat on these leaves so I could show you, so I can finish them and show you. If I need a little bit of white to help cover up the red, I can do that. I want these leaves to be totally painted. I just mixed a little red and white together. It kind of turned into a pink, but I'm going to let that dry and then I'll add a little bit more red on top. But you're going to do a white outline in between each of these sections to really make these leaves pop and stand out. It's going to be quite beautiful. And again, the video is recorded. I'll do some of those details before the end of the video so you can see that work. Going to slowly just fill in some of these. I'm going to give it a minute to dry, and then I'll show you what the white detail looks like in between some of these. You also may develop your own ideas or techniques as you are working on these details. Again, I'm just letting my white lotus flowers dry. In its most simple form, you could just leave the white as like a white lotus. That's totally fine. I think it looks beautiful the way it is. I'm taking a little bit of white paint with a little water, and I have a very fine brush, and hopefully this brush works. If it doesn't, I'll just grab another one. And I'm going to take the outline, and I'll do this one down here first in the corner. I'm going to outline this leaf with white paint, and I'm going to show you what this detail is. So I'm outlining the edge, and this is going to look, and I'll zoom down so you can see the work I'm doing. A little water, a little white paint, and a fine brush. And I'm going to go in between each of these colors. And this is a lick. want to do this once everything's painted, but I want to show it to you in the video so you can see how beautiful it's going to look. I'm going to go in between each of these colors. And it's going to truly segment each of these colors. See how beautifully it's segmenting those? It's really starting to tie it all together. So you can do the same technique with, see how beautiful that looks, nice and clean compared to this one over here. This one looks really messy. This one looks a little more together with outlining in between those segments. That's what I wanted to show you. I'll do the same thing over here so you can see it. I'm going to outline the entire leaf. I called these leaves. I'm dancing my way around the outside first. And I'm going right in between each of these colors. So there's a lot of touch-up details you can do. You can also do the same outlining trick for your lotus petals as well. So once you have the flowers painted ever so perfectly, see how clean those look now down here? Really nice. You can do the same outlining trick with your lotus flowers, with your lotus petals. Use a small brush. I'm going to outline this one, this big long leaf in the middle. The smaller the brush you have, the better. This is not the smallest brush I own, but I'm just going to use it anyways. I'm going to outline the whole leaf in white, and I'm going to go in between each of the segments. And I'm doing this big middle leaf right now, just to show you. Okay. I'm going to go in between each of these segments. Nice and slow. You can use a little bit of water with your white. You could use just white paint. Totally up to you. A little water might help it flow a little easier. I have a nice little point on the end of my leaf over here. Happy little point. I'm putting a little bit more water mixed with my white paint. Just makes it a little bit more thin. And I'm outlining each of these segments. And it's just really tying everything together. I love this. If you don't like it, it's okay. You don't have to do it. But I think it looks really quite nice. It makes it look like that stained glass look, which somebody mentioned previously. So it really just ties together some of those objects. I can do some secondary touch-up color paints inside of these, but I wanted to show you what that looks like there. Okay. I'll do a little bit more here. But again, in this class and others, I encourage you to spend as much or as little time as you wish on all of these elements. I could easily spend another hour or two on this one, which I actually intend to spend more time. I'm gonna use, I really want these lotus petals to be a nice solid white. So what does that require? It requires to make sure that they are filled in entirely. It requires me to do an extra coat of paint. So for me as an artist, it's important for me to have these lotus petals be nice and white. So it might take me a little bit of extra time. And I think it's important to talk about that because you're going to figure out what's important to you. And, typically our classes are about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Some of you may know that, but it's important to know that you can always spend more time after these classes to really continue to make this yours. Some of us are very detail oriented. Paul, your mother, Jean, is very detail oriented. So is Susan and Jenny and Sharon. You all care about those details. So you do your thing and take as much or as little time as you wish. But I truly hope that you all are enjoying this inspiration. It's quite different. I find it really calming to kind of acknowledge what layers and details are important to me. Along the way because we don't always do complicated inspirations like this. And I think it's fun sometimes to change and pressure ourselves to do something a little different. I may put in maybe another bud up here. I need something in this corner visually. Maybe I do just a couple leaves. I don't know. Maybe I just do like a lotus that's kind of half on, half off. But I want you to acknowledge and look at your composition to notice if there's anything else you want to add and where. Maybe I'll just add a little rounded bud here. Maybe that will be complete for me. I could add in. But I'm just going to put this here. Do a nice solid coat of white. And it went on actually kind of big for me. So sometimes with acrylic, you can kind of wipe some of it off. Let me see if I could wipe some of this off in the corner here. Yeah, I was able to save some of it. That's perfect. It went on a little too big for me. So sometimes when you're using acrylic, you can kind of quickly wipe something off, which was good. And this is blue, so I can use a little bit of blue to touch up that space. That's no big deal. And just paint over it. It's so nice when you can just paint over something. If something doesn't go your way, look at this. I can paint right over it. And I can fix it after. So again, for me, I want you all to focus on getting the base color of your lotus in and then adding any secondary colors. Look and see if you want to add any additional detail. But outlining your lotus petals after is a really helpful thing to do. Adding any of those secondary colors. It's kind of a choose your own destiny kind of inspiration because you can pick and choose what you want to do along the way. Whether you want to have that abstract approach, whether you want to put in those purposeful lines. I'm just going to add in a little bit of extra white here and there, and then I can figure out what more I may want to do. But the white for me to stand out, this foreground is probably one of the most important things. I want these to really stand out. So doing 2 coats of white for these petals, I highly encourage you to do. Because then you can always refine your secondary colors. You can re-outline your lotus petals, etc. Some of my leaf segments may need second coats. That's okay. You can always go back in and do those. But I'm here for each of you. Most importantly, I hope you enjoyed yourselves. If there's any questions, if you're watching the video, please use the comments below on YouTube to ask questions. And for the folks on the live call, please let me know if there's anything I can do to support you, or if you have questions with any finishing steps or tips. I'm here to support you along the way here. But I hope you enjoyed this. It's quite beautiful. But I love the complement of the oranges and the blues. I intend to add more oranges, but I love that the oranges are starting to stand out. I'm going to come in with a little bit more of a punchy orange. now that some of these coats are dry, I can come in with a little bit more orange, which I'll do here just to show you. Ladies and gents, I encourage you to take your time, finish up. I'm going to continue to work on this. I will post my progression within my Patreon space so you can see where I'm at and where it goes. And I encourage you to do your second coats on your colors that will make those colors stand out a little bit more. And then do outlining on your lotus petals and along your leaves. And then it will continue to come to life for you. But I want to thank each of you for being here and spending time with me today. Most importantly, making time for yourself to slow down and to recharge in ways that mean the most to you.